Serenbe is a place where people live, work, learn, and play in celebration of life's beauty. And we're here to share the stories that connect residents and guests to each other and to nature. This is Serenbe Stories. Serenbe Stories is brought to you by the Inn at Serenbe. The Inn is nestled in the rolling countryside of bucolic Serenbe, where guests can walk on the 15 miles of trails through preserved forest land, the wildflower meadow, and the animal village. You can relax by the pool, hot tub, or in rocking chairs on the wraparound porch. Play on the croquet lawn, swings, and in-ground trampolines. Connect with nature and each other, all while staying in luxurious rooms on the Inn grounds or within the community of Serenbe. Book your stay today at serenbeinn.com. And I want to welcome our guest, Chad Epple and Steve Nygren. How are you guys doing today?
Thanks, Monica.
Chad is here. He is the vice president of our engineering firm, not Serenbe's engineering firm, but the engineering firm that we partner with, SEI, which is Southeastern Engineering. He and his wife have owned the company for, a number of years. We're going to hear about that. He formed SEI in 1999, and then I believe combined it with your wife's business, who is also a civil engineer. She had traffic engineering solutions, and you guys combined that in 2005. So I want to hear all about civil engineering and how that relates to Serenbe. My first question is always, how did you come in to meet Steve Nygren and the Serenbe brand originally?
Well, the first time I met Steve, it was I was invited to a charrette. This is back in 2004, 2005. It's a little fuzzy. Mm-hmm. But at first I had to look up what a charrette was.
Sure.
Okay, so that was quite some time ago. But I first met Steve. There were a number of other engineers on the project that preceded us. And we interviewed Steve for the project. And first time I met Steve, he came in he didn't have any shoes on. I do remember that.
I like that.
And he came bounding in, full of energy, and liked him from day one. So
yeah, I love it. So where was that, Steve? Do you remember that first meeting?
That would have been in the con room at
downstairs
at the Hawthorne room at the Inn. Okay. So that first meeting was the Hawthorne room at the Inn.
So you were still living in the house, what is now the Inn at Serenbe, yes?
We were still living there, and we had the meeting, and so we were. We had started with an engineering firm, and they weren't quite getting it. And so we were interviewing different firms. And so that was the interview. And Chad and SEI have been with us ever since. That was in the early days.
That's amazing. And we did an episode in our first season that went really deep into engineering, infrastructure, how you lay the lines, where they go, what the order of, the phone versus the gas versus the water and all that good stuff. But tell me a little bit about how did you get into civil engineering before we dig into Serenbe's? You went to UNC, is that right?
That's correct. But I've been a civil engineer my whole life.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I was building tree houses. And it was never a decision I ever had to make. It was just what I was going to do. So it was an easy decision to make to go into engineering. I went to UNC Charlotte, met my wife, who was a traffic engineer in college. And she's much smarter than I am.
Okay.
She started her business, and as soon as she got her PE, her professional engineering license, in 1996. Mm-hmm. And I learned from her. I watched her.
Okay.
She could do the really hard things, the accounting, the human resources. And I started SEI, Southeastern Engineering, in 1999.
Okay. That's why she has the president title, right?
That's why
she's smarter.
We merged. We operated two separate companies for 5 years. We're like, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. Two sets of insurances, two sets of everything. And we merged the companies together.
And where did you start the company out? It wasn't at Serenbe originally. Where were you guys located?
Originally, we were located in Gwinnett County. Okay. We moved out of Gwinnett into Cobb. Right around 2001, 2002. Okay.
And what kind of work did you guys do? I mean, like for the general listener, civil engineering, like I kind of understand it has something to do with, but like that versus transportation and how you brought it together. Tell me, like, what kind of services do you guys offer?
Currently or when we started out?
When you started out and how that's evolved.
You do anything that pays. Okay. So when people ask, can you say yes before they even finish the sentence.
Great.
So, But currently, we offer quite a variety of services. We have about 110, 115 people currently.
Oh, wow, that's a huge company.
So, we provide traffic, engineering, transportation, civil site. And civil site covers a pretty broad array of commercial, multifamily, residential, green infrastructure. We have a pretty robust environmental group now. We do surveying. We have UAVs now.
What's a UAV?
Well, it's a UAF. Sorry, no, it's a drone essentially.
A drone.
Yes,
okay.
Drones.
So you have drones. Okay.
So we do a lot of surveying from our drones now. So we just photogrammetry.
That's interesting.
We have LiDAR capabilities from our drones. So it's an emerging technology that's been very, very effective.
So drones are really interesting. So the new technology being integrated into civil engineering, how does that work? What is that?
It's a fantastic way to quickly and effectively and efficiently collect an enormous amount of data. We can do topographic surveys very quickly now, and we can use photogrammetry or LiDAR, which is it's essentially laser scanning from a drone. So.
And that gives you the topographical,
exactly.
So the ups and downs.
It gives you every feature that's visible, whether it be trees, curb and gutter, buildings. Obviously, you can't get underground utilities, but we can collect data now that it would take weeks. We can do in hours now.
Okay. And would that supplant like an actual survey on the ground? The guys with the little looking through the eyes and
It does. It does not replace construction staking.
Okay.
It doesn't replace a lot of things, but it effectively allowed me to reduce my survey staff by 3 crews.
Wow. Okay. That's great. When you met Steve that first time walking in with his bare feet, was that the first time you had a client appointment with somebody with bare feet? Or
Yeah, it was a first.
And what were you looking for, Steve, that the original engineers weren't able to achieve?
Well, we're really pushing the envelope on a lot of issues, as Chad remembers. So there's, engineers have a very logical, plus there are all the rules that don't always necessarily have logic. They have just they've been the rules for years. And so we were testing a lot of those issues. And I was looking for somebody who would literally roll up their sleeves and get involved with pushing. And is this a rule just because it's a rule, or is there a logical reason to it? Or how can we change what we're doing to fit within the rule?
Okay.
And to expand on that, I would say Steve was, the impression I got from Steve at that very first interview was he was looking for somebody to share his vision.
Okay.
And what he was trying to achieve. And he's right. There were a lot of rules that were in the way that, like you said, there were rules because that's how they've always been done. They weren't necessarily good rules. And they were good rules in certain circumstances. But there are times when the rules can get in the way. And I think Steve was looking for somebody that would push that envelope, that would execute and ask the questions.
And get excited about that. And that's what I saw in Chad and his team, is they've been willing to say, okay, well, let's see what's the latest thing. And so, a lot of that has happened with why our streets and roads look different, whether it's the grade or the turn. And because our speed limit is 15 miles an hour, we can do things that kind of is different. And I remember the first time we walked the staking in Grange, and that was why I saw Chad was really willing, because everybody had done it the way it should be done. And I said, no, let's do this. Let's change this. And he was willing to say, oh, well, let's look at that. Does that really have to be that way? And we changed those grades. And that's why you have some of that interest as you drive. You're not always seeing the view sheds. Right.
You haven't flattened the entire neighborhood and built upon it. The hills are still here.
Right. Another good example of that is in Selburne, which I've always called phase 1. There are, if you notice, the top of the Omega goes through several streams.
Yes.
Okay. So common practice is to avoid streams. You turn your back on ecology and those resources. You turn your back because the rules are you have to avoid those impacts. But what Steve did in a thoughtful way is he he crossed those streams and really brought people to the ecology. So you can now, when you walk from this office here down to Blue-Eyed Daisy, you get to experience a lot of that beauty and that ecology that if you would have followed the rules, you would never see that.
Interesting.
And that's one of the things that really the industry has changed on. In the early days, we had to fight because the rule was put it in a hard pipe and get rid of it and turn your back on it. And if you look at what's happening, whether it's Proctor Creek or the big cement ditch in Los Angeles, is now biomimicry has come into the mainstream. But back when we were talking about doing all these things, man, it was not only were people not doing it, it was against the regulations to do it.
That's interesting. So what would you have had to have, let me rephrase that. So in this case where you can walk, there's an omega, and you walk the omega from here to the Blue-Eyed Daisy, you cross over a stream. I mean, it's underneath the street, but you can see it right there. What would have had to been done? Would you just had to avoid it? The street would have... It would have been up on the ridges. It would have been completely avoiding these areas. Wow. Okay. And that was the way that they thought, oh, well, we can avoid environmental impact by kind of ignoring it. Is that sort of the way it worked? Or
ask the question again.
The environmental impact, because you were saying, you turn your back on the ecology so you can avoid the impact on it.
Correct.
And so
you stay away from it.
Stay away from it. Yeah.
But instead of engaging it in a thoughtful way, which is what Steve's done.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, that's, I put up, the other day, like a picture of the stream going, and I'm like, this is my walk. And I'm just walking to get, coffee.
And you think that those tributaries are throughout all of our cities, and very seldom are you even aware of them.
No, it's totally true. And we, to your point, LA River is trying to bring back the river and make that, a little more natural. But Denver, or Boulder, I should say, does an incredible job with the Boulder Creek.
Boulder has done a great job with it. Well, and, we've even covered a river. And so, Chad, you're doing a lot of work at the airport now. How much do y'all deal with the river that actually is under the airport?
Yes, stormwater at the airport is interesting. There are master studies done that unfortunately were done 20, 30 years ago that allowed a lot of pavement to occur. So there's not a lot of stormwater management at the airport currently.
Because it's all underneath.
It's already, those impacts have been incurred, piped decades ago.
Right. But there is conversations, and I believe there was a woman who wrote a book, right, about the river under the airport.
Yes, it's a very distressed, the Flint River, it's upper, it's a very stressed river corridor because of all the development. And the airport's right at the very top of it, of the basin.
Okay, that's really interesting. Tell me about what were some of the first projects when you came here? You walked the land. Were you part of phase 1 or just phase 2 Grange?
No, the finishing part, phase 1.
Yeah, finishing phase 1.
Right.
And the first new plan was actually where we're sitting right now. And the funny story there is right here at Southern Way, I wanted to flatten the whole area. And Steve said, no, let's make a really steep road. Let's build a 13-foot wall right here and put it. And I've learned more about engineering from this man than you would believe. But I just listened and finally got his vision, and we executed on it, and it's beautiful. Yeah,
no, that's true. And we'll put a picture up that the Hill restaurant sits on a hill, which is where our offices are, and we look out over the tops of the trees. But this hill, you've talked about the grade. Tell us a little bit about that. Well, there's several issues
with that. I mean, one is it's traditional. 12% grade is all you can have. And so that's one of the reasons Chad said you've got to. It isn't just that he thought that's what you had to do. Well, we found we could get a variance on that and fudge it just a minute. But they said, well, if you do that, you can't have a commercial building up there. And I said, why not? He said, well, your sidewalk has to be handicap accessible. So we scratched our heads on that for a minute, and they said, well, why can't we divide the sidewalk? And so the upper level is the upper sidewalk, which is all ADA compatible with and leads to your handicap parking.
Yeah.
And then the other side of the sidewalk follows the street. And so you have this much more European look at the corner than we would have had before.
Right. Because you stopped and you questioned and you thought versus just following the age-old rules. What about Grange? What were some of the interesting things in phase 2 in Grange that you guys discussed and sort of brought forward?
Well, the best part about the Grange was the existing lake. Being able to use that for so many features. We were able to use it for stormwater management. It provides irrigation source for the community, and same principles. Grange completely embraces the ecology and the natural resources around the lake. If you look at the shape of it, Steve and Dr. Field have done just amazing things with their layouts and their visions for that area. So, I take their plans and really just try to minimize additional impacts. Bring the disturbance in and really contour the development to the land.
And was the Gabion Bridge also something that you guys worked on together?
It was.
Yeah, Chad brought that forward as we were looking at what the issues were, because initially we looked at we wanted to curve the road, and of course the most practical thing was to have a straight bridge. But then we couldn't have had the curve. And then I remember Chad says, well, to get the curve, we're going to have to put a very wide bridge in. It'd be a wide piece of concrete, but then you could curve on top of the concrete.
Right.
And then he came back and said, oh, here's the Gabion where we could actually do these environmental things with it.
And was that something that you had done before or read about? Or
No.
Tell me how that you came about that idea.
I was working with Steve. Your challenge to come up with out-of-the-box solutions to his vision, honestly.
And had mostly been done, I think, in South America. Is that correct? Or in European countries? I don't know where. I think that I had read that somewhere, that it just hadn't been something that was utilized in America that often.
It was, and honestly, it was a very cost-effective way to solve it. It was the Gabion Basket Bridge is not a true bridge. A true bridge would have been much more expensive. So.
Okay.
But it's fun, on tours, people that are in the engineering field, planning field, they'll recognize, sometimes I haven't seen it, but wow, that's really cool. And the big thing that the Grange Bridge specifically, we were able to save trees within 5 to 10 feet of what would have been totally an embankment of dirt that we would have spent a fortune replanting that wouldn't even be coming near mature trees today. And now you drive through there and you can't imagine that you're 35 feet above the stream.
Well, and I think you look at when you're driving down a highway, that's exactly what's happened. If any of those overpasses, which we'll call bridges, right? That on either side, it's all new plantings or grass, but it's this very artificial feeling. Do you see people changing the way that they're building bridges?
Not bridges, but I see more and more people pointing to Serenbe as an example of how to develop. I'm involved with several other projects. The Buchart Farms are starting to assemble their tracks and their land planning, and they continue to use Serenbe as an example.
Which is great. Yeah. Are there any things that, other things, because Motto is a whole nother ballgame, right? I think that's fascinating with the pond over there and the way we're going up the hillside. Tell me a little bit about that.
Motto is interesting because Motto was actually zoned in Fulton County, I'd estimate 2006, 2007-ish. And I remember Steve pointing to there's Motto is very similar to Grange, except there's no lake. There's a stream that runs down the center of it. It's just not impounded. And I remember Steve coming, working with Dr. Phil Tab on the concept, the Omega that exists now today. And I always try to support their efforts because I'm the guy that has to execute on this. So I'm always trying to say, okay, what if I need stormwater here? And I needed a stormwater facility right in the center of the Omega. And Steve Steve looked at me and said, Chad, someday people are going to get married here. He said, this is going to be so beautiful when I'm done that it will. And I was like, it's a pond. How is this ever going to happen? And it's he's well on his way.
Yeah, no, I know. I've seen some of the plans. And so that'll probably by the end of this year, you think, or 2020?
And sometime in 2020, yeah, we're figuring out some of the engineering issues with the bridges and how everything hits. But then the exciting thing that you move that. So Chad had the necessity of a stormwater retention because Motto is very dense, more dense than anything we've done. And that was the logical place for it. So of course it was, how do we make it beautiful? Yes, let's turn that in. And then as we were looking at the, where were we going to do the geothermal wells for the One Motto office building, because it's so dense, we didn't have this large area. For instance, the apartments in Grange, we had the paddock at the stable. And so that's where all the geothermal wells are. And I think they came up, we were going to have 35 wells in the distance, and we just didn't have the space. And so that's why I came to Chad and his team and said, what if we put it at the bottom of our stormwater retention?
So it's a multi-purpose feature.
That is amazing.
So that was initially going to be, I don't know how deep, 10 feet deep, maybe, or 8. And now it's 32 feet deep.
Okay.
And so it really, things like that just keep, well, how do we push this new technology? People had not done that.
Right. And so that geothermal technology powers all of the One Motto building? Or
That's correct.
Okay. Will it power other commercial there? Or is it just...
There may be capacity, but we're going to see. But right now it was engineered for the One Motto building.
That's amazing.
No, so it's incredible what you can do. Now it's a stormwater, it's a geothermal, it's a visual asset.
It's a wedding location?
It will be. We're absolutely going to have weddings the first way. But then Chad, because it is so dense, had to come up with some other things because, my rule is we don't have pipes unless we absolutely have to. So you might tell them about the cisterns and some of the things you did there.
Yeah, we had to come up with, if we really have to take the stormwater out of the ponds, we can't build traditional detention ponds and put fences around them. So what we try to do is locate our stormwater mitigation near the source, and we really try to embrace treatment chains, not a one shot, one kill design approach, but rather a series of stormwater mitigation. And what we developed a number of items in Motto. I think one of the most successful ones were the infiltration with the rain gardens in the roadway. They appear ostensibly to be landscape islands separating the parking, non-street parking, but they're actually rain gardens that infiltrate stormwater.
Okay.
That capture and infiltrate, treat stormwater, and provide some detention benefits, but it's mostly water quality benefits.
Okay.
But that goes from there onto other treatment chains. It doesn't just go from there to the creek.
Right.
There are an assortment of stormwater treatment.
All within Motto.
Yes.
And so what's the next chain? So once you get into this little island
from there,
cistern.
there are bioswales. There are a lot of engineered swales that allow infiltration. So, and then eventually it goes down into an engineered wetland area.
Oh, okay.
And the engineered wetlands are really the areas where the volume of stormwater is mitigated.
And where is that? I'm trying to picture it as somebody who walks around Motto all the time. Where are those hidden?
It's not hidden. It's right off the path. You'll see them.
It's true to form. Steve has incorporated that into the walking path. So it is it has become an amenity.
Right.
You can walk over it whenever you're on the trail system.
Right. That's kind of fascinating that this could be incorporated into the way you live and you could see it versus just sort of piped away, hidden, and we ignore it.
And so far, our listeners that really have not encountered this are the issues. For years, we have been putting them in the hard pipes, which we mentioned. Well, what happens is then we have all the pollutants from our streets that end up going into hard surfaces, and they build up speed in a hard surface because it's generally flowing, gravity flow, to your tributaries. And when this hits the tributaries, there's so much pressure that it starts eroding that tributary, and it has polluted water. And so this is why almost all of our cities have turned their backs, because instead of these tributaries being an asset, a beautiful stream, they're dirty, And because we turn our back, they becoming dumping grounds for old tires and batteries and all sorts of things. And this is why now the cities are starting to be aware of this, but it's costing millions to clean up these tributaries. And so I often ask when now we're speaking about Serenbe and how many people in the audience can imagine where the raindrop that falls on their house or their office makes its way to the tributaries and the streams. And hardly anyone can imagine that. And so my dream of the cities of the future is we have this green network. It's sort of a vein system of our waterways to where you're very aware of how all of the stormwater that hits the building actually navigates, and we have these greenways throughout. And it's starting to happen. I mean, there's an awareness now that's really changing.
Well, you mentioned Proctor Creek.
Proctor Creek in Atlanta is a very good example, and that has carried the stormwater, and it's been totally destroyed, and it's costing a lot of money. Now, it is going to be one of the great assets of Metro Atlanta as that path goes to the Chattahoochee River. And in fact, there's a whole Riverlands project that we haven't talked about, but in the future, one of the now catalytic parks that's been identified is going to be right there at the mouth of Proctor Creek. And so there's a lot happening. And, my hope is that all urban areas start combining their parks department and their watershad departments, because these two teams should really be working together, because Old Fourth Ward Park in Atlanta is another good example of this.
Chad, do you see anything like that happening? Sort of, that's really fascinating. Parks and watersheds coming together. Do you think, like, what are what would be the pushback that the city would give you or the planners would give you?
Pushback always seems to be money, is honestly what I see. Property rights, previous historic land uses, getting people engaged. It's an education, but embracing the problems rather than continuing to turn your back on them is the path forward, clearly.
How did you, because you mentioned that you have a pretty robust environmental business now. Tell me a little bit the difference between what we would think of as like maybe the conventional side of the business and environmental. And like, I would guess that Serenbe uses the environmental side, but like what's sort of the difference there?
My environmental group is really can be broken into two separate areas. One is the more traditional permitting for environmental impacts. Okay. So ecological resources, whether it be floodplain, state stream buffers, or core federal jurisdictions. Okay. There's a permitting and a design process there. But another division within the environmental group is the green infrastructure.
Okay.
These are some of the techniques we pioneered here at Serenbe, and we're applying with success in other projects.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about here? I mean, I know we've talked about the Gabion and the bioswales. I don't know if there's a term for the stream not being packed away in a tube. Like, I don't know if there's a technical term, but are there other things that we haven't talked about that are other
stormwater management measures,
or just other aspects of the green infrastructure, or does it mostly deal with water?
It mostly under the context of under what SEI does. Yes, it's mostly stormwater.
Okay,
and grading of your land. How are we going to land the streets that we have sketched out? How are they going to actually land on our existing topography with the minimal amount of disturbance?
Okay. And that's something that, do you find that other clients ask you for that?
No, I don't. I think what Steve is referring to is tying into existing grade. Instead of having a 3-to-1 slope, for an example, we would tie in at a 1-to-1 and really limit the disturbance, really tighten up the clearing limits impacts. Having our roads a little steeper, slowing cars down. It's great traffic calming to have a little steeper, tighter vertical curves on your roads.
Okay,
and making them conform to the land.
Right. No, and I mean that's something that we always want to do here.
And so Chad and his team really work with this because most developments work on having a flat surface, and there are a lot of reasons that this is easier traditionally. And so we really struggle with all of our utilities in them running their lines according to the way we have laid it out and want that minimum disturbance, because they're used to having maybe a 20-foot flat area totally void of trees and everything else that they can bring in their equipment. And of course, we're turning and leaving trees and all sorts of issues. And we're very tight. We're very dense. So the work that SEI does, it has to be very specific. And then we have to watch to where those things go in, because something that's a foot off in a suburban type thing wouldn't even be noticed. Where because of our density and leaving the topography as it is, it becomes that 12 inches can be critical at times.
And have you found, I'm guessing, like liaisons or the right partners at those utilities who now sort of understand the way that we do things, or is it, a constant struggle?
Yeah, well, utility owners are, yes, a constant struggle, but yes, we have forged very good relationships with a lot of the utility owners. But I think, not to be understated, are the architectural considerations. There are a team of very talented architects in and around Serenbe that have really embraced the topographical challenges that this kind of development leaves them, and they've really done very creative things with it. And it's part of the appeal of what you see at Serenbe.
Yeah, I thought Motto Hillside is one of those examples.
Oh, we're really going to see
going up the hill there on the other side.
A topography that folks said was not going to be buildable as some estate lots sitting on the top. And so we all rolled up our sleeve to challenge that. And we'll see what happens. It's we're moving forward. The utilities are on now. We'll start the first of the year, actual structures, the first of 2020.
I'm so excited to see those.
And so, it's going to be very exciting.
Well, one of the things is you seem to have liked Serenbe enough to have built a house here.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
A house and an office. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. From when I first met Steve, the place has always moved me at a level, and certainly moved my wife. And so we purchased a lot here in 2008, 2009, something that time. I'm not exactly sure when. And we, the vision was to open an engineering office, and then maybe put a flat above it. And so that's exactly what we did. It's a very successful office. It's so successful, we've actually purchased the lot next door.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
And we're working on design plans right now for an office expansion.
Great. Pop out that wall and come on over.
Exactly, yeah.
That's great. And then what about upstairs? You're going to expand the house?
No, it's we might do a for rent above it.
Yeah.
A one-bedroom flat or something.
Yeah, I mean, your home is gorgeous.
You should put some pictures, because it's a dramatic.
Yes, tell us.
And you all have 4 children, and you designed this so that all 8 of you, or 6 of you, I guess that is.
Yes, can fit. Yes, it's a relative, it's a 30-foot wide live-work unit. It's 30 by, I think it's 60 feet deep. The entire first floor is dedicated to the SEI office. And then the main floor, the second floor residential it's a 3-bedroom flat, and then we have a rooftop deck on top. And yes, we can we can get all 6 of us in there, and we've done it.
In fact, you lived full time there as a family for a period of time.
Yes, we were storing a farmhouse up north, and yes, my entire family we lived here for about 6 months. It was great.
And it was all the interiors designed by Smith Haynes.
Smith Haynes, yes.
Which I know got a lot of press coverage over the years. So we will throw those photos up. It's absolutely stunning. Anything else you want to tell us before we wrap up? Any projects you're working on outside of Serenbe that are really interesting, that have got you excited about?
No. Not as exciting as Serenbe. Not after this. I could talk about it. But
well, good. Well, I'm excited about the expansion of the office. That's really, really exciting. So your other office is in town, right? Or is it north side?
Yes, on the north side.
Great.
Yes.
Well, we're excited that you're here, and we're excited you're expanding. And it's great to learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing.
And we really appreciate chatting with us today, but through the years, because really what Serenbe is today is because of your willingness to push the edges and to bring your team forward. And I know that hasn't always been easy. And I know both in the engineering and other people, folks roll their eyes and say it's the Serenbe way. But yes, but now it's a willingness to really do that.
Yeah. Well, good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you for listening to Serenbe Stories. New episodes are available on Mondays. Please rate and review the podcast and make sure to email your questions for Steve Nygren to stories@serenbe.com. You may even get to hear them on the podcast. More details about episodes and guests are available on our website, serenbestories.com.